culture and being at home. This is the lot of displaced people. When people, if somebody asks me today, what is the one thing, if I have to mention just one thing which I would not really, which I can't think of going through again, I think it's being a refugee. It's a terrible thing to be a refugee. It's very difficult because if you are grown up, maybe if you are a child, it's not such a problem. Probably too, it is a problem. You lose your friends and you start everything, okay. But if you are grown up, and you come to a new culture, new society, new customs, new habits, everything new, you suddenly feel you feel inadequate. You feel like a child. Your expression is primitive in the best case, if you already have some language. Your expression is primitive. Your expression doesn't do justice to your ambitions, how to express yourself. I still suffer from that, still today. I teach in Hebrew. I teach in Hebrew. I write books in Hebrew. Well, my books are always edited by somebody, but I teach in Hebrew, and I work on every lecture trying to find the right word for the right. I want to be precise because I'm a great stickler for precision. So I try to be precise, but I can only be precise in Hebrew if I have really looked up the word, if it's a rare word or not very common word or something like that. So for somebody who really appreciates the importance of language and likes to be precise, and especially somebody who respects language as a medium, it's a terrible thing to be uprooted. Even from that point of view, and there is a very, very good book written about that, which I very much recommend to you, by a woman called Eva Hoffman. Do you know?
Lost in Translation.
Right. I identified myself so much with her when I read that. Have you read that?
I've got it at home, I haven't managed to
read it. Read it. It gives you the ambiance, the atmosphere of being lost. For somebody for whom it's very important. Lots of people don't appreciate language. I mean, they just try to get done what they have to do and finished. But if you respect language, if it's important for you how you express yourself, and it's important for you to express yourself, then it's a great problem. I'm sorry, that was a digression.
Not at all.
It has something to do with...
Not at all. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful way.
Right. So it was, and especially when I came to Israel, I had a small child. I gave birth to that, my son, here in Israel. But very soon, I came pregnant. And that's how I could come. He used it. I was alone with him, and even in school, in kindergarten and then in school, I couldn't help him with homework. He couldn't, he would come up and say, Mommy, how do I say this and how do I say that? And I hesitated. I had to look up in dictionary. It's a very unpleasant feeling. There are worse things in life, but it's some kind of deprivation. It is a kind of deprivation. Therefore, I really have heart for refugees. And now people come, so many from Russia and other places. Some of them are very unpleasant. Some of them are always complain. Some of them do this, and some of them are, maybe are crooks. Some of them maybe whatever. But I know what it is to come when you are grown up to a new place, and especially from Russia, which has the whole set of values, the whole approach to the system is so different in Soviet Russia than here that I can understand their difficulty. And I even more than that, I not only understand their difficulty, I understand their aggressiveness. I understand their bitterness. I understand their complaints, which are very often unbased. Very often the complaints have no factual base. Yet I understand that they need to complain. And when I hear people so easily saying, oh, those Russians and this, I always think that they don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. And you know, people, I pay a price for it. Because whenever people hear, I speak Russian, of course, and whenever people hear me speak Russian, those new people, and I meet them, I meet them as cashiers in supermarket and in all kinds of places like this, taxi drivers and things. And whenever they hear that or sometimes people come to repair things at home or something, they hear that I speak Russian. I disclose that I speak Russian because I hear the difficulties they have in telling me what. So they start to tell me how miserable they are. Very often, not all, of course, but how miserable. And I sympathize. I emphasize, actually, because I really know what it means. I have no experience with people who come from different other countries, like the Moroccans. Of course, I have not such experience. I have less empathy for them. Also, basically, I also understand them. You undergo such a devaluation, you know, unjustified. People say, very often it's a matter of misunderstanding. For instance, do you want to talk about this?
Yes.
Okay. For instance, those Russians claim that we are what they call nekulturny. That means that we lack culture. Mm-hmm. They say you lack it. This Israel lacks culture. Now, I know that it's absolutely baseless statement, because Israel definitely doesn't lack culture. And their feeling that Israel lacks culture is, of course, caused by the fact that they have no access to this culture. They have no access in many, many senses. First of all, they don't know the language. How can you understand culture if you don't know the language? Second, they have no. Actually, the fact that they don't know Hebrew and very often don't know any English really closes the culture of this, shuts them out from the culture of the society. This is one thing. The other thing is that actually they confuse external things with culture. You know, we are a very rude society, as you might have noticed. We are rude people. I don't think I'm rude, but most of my compatriots are rude, and they are much more. I don't know. They are not more civilized, but they are more disciplined in queues and places like this. So the fact that we push and shout in this makes them feel terrible. They say this is not a cultural behavior. But of course, to the other side of the culture, which is very, very, very rich in Israel, they have no access. The second thing is, of course, they have grown up there on a lot of very good music, and many of them appreciate music. I'm talking about the educated Russians. Many of them appreciate music, many of them play musical instruments and so on, and they don't always have access to that because performances is very expensive, which they were not. Russia. Their schools are probably in many senses better than ours. They maybe not, they don't encourage innovation, this is true. You know, they, on the one hand, but on the other hand, they do encourage solid study. And I have had students from Russia. They all know how to study, and they study. They don't have this very typical Israeli approach, student approach, which is, you know, somehow I'll pass and I'll do. They don't have that. They know how to study. They're very conscientious. They're very conscientious, and they know how to study, especially in science. So they can, and also, of course, they. Now I don't know about the standard of living. I think they are not losing. They are not. Their standard of living in Israel is probably, even if they live very modestly, is probably not lower than that there, because I have been to Russia back after many years and so on. I think it's terrible. They're so used that they don't notice that everything stinks and everything is dirty and everything is lousy and terrible. And but the main thing is probably that they come with wrong expectations. You know, I have a very checkered career, academic career also. Very funny, very unusual. But anyhow, I moved over to teaching what I teach. I've stopped now, but what I used to teach in the last 20 years, only 20 years ago. Oh, actually even more, because I was abroad for many years. Before, I taught social science. And in my department of sociology, for 2 years, I was in charge of foreign students, advisor to foreign students, counselor, whatever, to foreign students. And I remember, you're American? Australian. I remember those American girls and boys, especially in those times. Today it's probably different, who came here and they considered themselves heroes when they came here. They thought that they will go, and the Russians too, by the way, especially the Russians who came in the 70s, they thought that they will go straight from the airplane onto the barricades. ציונות, חלוציות, whatever. The reality just slapped their faces in a very cruel way. I also remember I have a son who was a student. At that time when I was that counselor, he was a student. And I felt that those boys and girls were very lonely. And I said to him, once I found him and a group of young people, his friends, you know, sitting there and joking and laughing and really having good time. And I said, look here, why cannot you ever include those boys and girls, those foreign boys and girls who come here, just invite them. So you know what they said? I remember exactly, because I understood in a way, but he said, I remember Gideon, my son, said, listen, we spent 2 months in a year on Miluim. We study very hard because we have to finish. We most of us work for just for Parnassa. And then in the evenings, if we come together, we want to relax. First of all, we want to speak Hebrew. Second, we don't want to talk about, at that time it was a subject, and I remember he said, we don't want to talk about Che Guevara. No, we don't want to talk about Che Guevara. We want to talk about our experiences in the Shtachim when I was serving them there, and about our political views and gossip. but not those things that interest them. Yes, so you see, there are this kind of problems, as you probably know. Have you noticed? How long have you been here?
I've been here 6 years.
You came with family or
No,
alone?
by myself.
Alone. And you started your university here?
No, I started my MA here.
You started MA here in history?
Yeah, that's my name.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You come from a kind of conservative Jewish family?
Yeah, traditional.
Traditional Jewish family, yes?
Yeah.
Very good friend of mine was ambassador to Australia until now, really. Shmuel Moyal, you met him? They're very, very sweet people. Anyhow, so that was my story about being a refugee, being a new immigrant. Because, you know, it's only semantic difference, new immigrant, refugee. In a way, it's semantic. For the Russians, it's mainly semantic. They consider themselves refugees.
But I'm puzzled.
Many of them, not all, but many of them see themselves as refugees, expatriates, not immigrants, because they are not in. Many of them, not all. So many of them have adjusted very well, but and then I remember how difficult it was for me. And do you want to ask me something? You want
I want to ask you your life. I want you to tell me about your life. I'm all puzzled. I don't need
Sharon, I have had a very, very long life, so it will take a lot of time to tell you my life.
I know, it's a very hard question. I want to know where you're from. I want to know...
I'll tell you. Okay. I was born 78 years ago. In a Polish, at that time, Polish town, which is called Vilna. In Polish it's Vilno. The Russians call it Vilna. The Lithuanians call it Vilnius. And if I may make a digression, when I came here, people used to ask me, where do you come from? And I would say, from Poland. For me, Vilna was Poland, because I was born. Vilna was taken over by Polish forces 1 year before I was born. And I would say Poland. Where in Poland? Vilna. Oh, Vilna is not Poland. Vilna is Russia. So next time people ask me, I would say I come from Russia. They would say, where from in Russia? I would say Vilna. Vilna is not Russia, it's Lithuania. Because in Jewish tradition, it's Lithuania. So I gave up, and since then I always answer I come from Vilna. Anyhow, so we were born in Vilna. I say we because I have a twin sister. We were born in Vilna, and our parents came from Russia. The language we spoke at home was Russian. And then when we started secondary school, we switched to Polish. The whole family somehow. And sometimes parents between themselves, they spoke Russian, but with us always Polish. And we spent the early childhood, not early, but something like when we were something like, I think 8 or so, our father got a job as a manager of a factory producing paper and dict. And paper, dict is, I don't know what it is in English, it's kind of stiff material.
Cardboard.
Maybe cardboard too, but dict is still something else, but never mind. It's all wood products. It was produced from wood, you know. They would mash wood and make all kinds of cardboard and paper. It was a big industry in northern Poland because it was so wooded. Anyhow, so we moved to a place some 30 kilometers away from Vilna and lived there. We had a very nice house. There was a kind of house for the manager, and we lived there. And there was no school. And so our parents, for some snobbish funny reason, brought us a demoiselle, a French governess, which a French governess who was a very two or three interns who suffered very much because we were very nasty to them, but we got some elementary French from that. And then when time came for us to go to secondary, and we had all kinds of tutors for primary school training. Then we went to secondary school, which there was not like here. It's secondary school is something like 8 years. Mm-hmm. It's secondary. Anyhow, we got into very good Polish government girls' school, which was very difficult for Jewish girls to get in. We went through examinations. I don't know how we passed them because our education was very, very poor. And but our parents had that knack for, trying to using connections and whatever to get us into that school. And we got into that school, both my sister and myself, and I remember at the beginning we had terrible discipline problems. We were not used to not running around, about, to ask to go out or something was there. But we got used. Anyhow, we finished that school. We studied in that school for 8 years. We had very, very, on the whole, very good teachers whom I still remember, and teachers who not only I remember, but I remember some of them. I remember what they taught me. Some of those teachers really laid the foundations of my interest in these things, intellectual and so on and so forth. Absolutely so. And our class teacher, whatever we call it, mechanechet, what's it, class teacher or some whatever, was our history teacher, was a very, very strict, very severe, very serious lady, young at that time, Christina Adolf, very straight, very honest, with absolute intellectual and moral integrity. Not liked. She wasn't like, such people are not liked. She recognized no compromise. No, she was just like, when we were when we just made our matriculation, and the war started. It was 1939. The war started, and I don't remember it. I remember very badly. So my memory is fragmentary. So I will try my best to tell you what I can, but if not, we shall have to ask my sister, who remembers much better, and we went through the same things, so she can fill in if there are problems. Anyhow, for instance, I can't reconstruct the history of those times, because there were Russians and there were Germans, and there were Russians again and Germans again, and Lithuanian independence, and so we changed hands so much, and I can't keep track of that. I just don't know. The somehow point of the story is that in 1941, the Germans occupied Vilna, and almost immediately started to shut the Jews in the so-called ghettos, which in Vilna was the historically Jewish part of the city, which I was never before. And he lived. I forgot maybe to mention, but I think it's obvious that we lived in a assimilated family. My parents spoke Polish or Russian, and they went to Polish and Russian schools, and they didn't have either Jewish or certainly not Zionist consciousness. We didn't celebrate holidays except for Yom Kippur. But on Yom Kippur we were forbidden to go to school. That I remember. as part of some kind of pride, you know. But but we ate. We didn't fast. And I remember that my mother was sewing and doing all these things and so on, and certainly no synagogue. So it was that kind of religiously completely indifferent home. And then the Germans came, and because it was so difficult for us to travel from our home outside the city to school. In the last 2 years of our schooling, our mother and ourselves lived in a flat, rented apartment in Vilna to make it easier for us. And our father stayed there, and our father would come for the weekends, so we would go there for the weekends, things like that. Then for a while we lived in Warsaw because our father was appointed something of the head of cartel, you know, of those producers. He was not, he worked for the factory, he was manager, he was not the owner, but still he represented that industry. Anyhow, so then the Germans came, and we were caught, my mother and the two of us, after all the things that we went through in the years 39 to 41, which were very difficult also, with Russians and Lithuanians. We tried to escape. We tried not to go to the ghetto. And we decided, our mother and ourselves, that we shall go back to the factory where our father was. And we walked, but we already had to wear the Star of David, but we took them off. My mother looked very, very un-Jewish. She was ash blonde, and she really didn't look Jewish. My sister and myself looked kind of you can see, looked nicer this or that, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know, but nobody would say, looking at you, would decide right away that you're Jewish, right? Mm-hmm. I think that was the same thing with us. And but we were caught. We were caught by Lithuanian soldiers at the gate of the city. The gate is a metaphor. It was just going out of the city. They tried to identify us. We had no identity cards, no nothing. They caught us, and they brought us back to the ghetto. Not back, we were not yet there, to the ghetto. And I think that the three of us were the last three people who entered that ghetto, because I don't know that, but I remember that when we entered, I remember that the wooden planks that were shutting off that little street were nailed. I remember that. I really do remember that sound of those nails going into this after us. So we were there. We were put in some. We entered some house, and well, whatever. It was such a hell that I can't even describe. We were tens of people in a medium-sized room. We slept on the floor, one person touching the other person. I'm sorry. Touching, so that if one of us had to get up, everybody would wake up. And it was terrible. It was we were in such despair. And people committed suicides, and they were screaming. It was terrible. Of course, we had nothing to eat, no water. Anyhow, on the, I think, third or fourth day, some Jewish functionaries of these ghetto authorities announced through loudspeakers that they are recruiting young people for work, forced labor. I immediately volunteered because I thought that anything would be can't be worse than this. So we were very young. We were just, I think we were 17. And so I immediately volunteered. And a large group of us went with soldiers around us. We were brought to army barracks, German army barracks on the outskirts of the city. And there I was told first to work in the kitchen to peel potatoes, and then they told me to wash the stairs. While I was washing stairs on the first day, there came up to me a young soldier, an officer, and said quietly, very quietly, he said, "Listen, I want to help you." You know, I didn't believe, I didn't trust, I thought he was making fun of me, but he somehow didn't stop. He went away and then came. He said, "Listen, can I help you in some way?" So I didn't want to talk to him. I said, "No." Next day, he came up again and he said that he's a chaplain. He said he was a chaplain and he would very much like to help. And somehow again, like in the ghetto, I said to myself, "My God, what do I risk? After all, if not today, then tomorrow they will kill me anyhow, so what do I risk?" So I said, "Yes. First of all, I want to bring out my sister. When we are brought back, tell the soldiers that there is another young woman who will come with us here, and we shall see later." I kind of thought, let's see. And it was so. Next time my sister also came, because in the evening we were brought back to the ghetto. She came, she resisted, she didn't want, she was so she was in such despair. She said no, she wouldn't go out. Anyhow, I forced her. Maybe she will tell you that it wasn't so. Probably she will tell you, because whatever I told you, I think that whatever I remember in a one way, she remembers in a different way. I think it's a very interesting phenomenon, everything. She calls me from when we only now started talking about it, and sometimes she calls me and she said, "Lila," they used to call me Lila at home. "You remember something?" I said, "Of course I remember." "Oh yes, at Baba," and so on. I said, "No, it wasn't like this. It was the other way around. Everything, almost everything." So. Now I forgot to tell you something. When the Germans came, during this, I think it was weeks before they organized the ghetto, a young man came from a message from Christina, who was that teacher, the one I told you about before, history teacher, who was so somehow. I think the only way to describe her was that she was uncompromisingly honest and straightforward, actually very integral person. Very believing Catholic, very, very devout Catholic. Now, she sent that somebody to tell us the following message. She said, "Girls, if the worst comes to the worst, come to me." Now, what come to me meant, she lived outside of town. She lived on a small farm, which was really not really agricultural farm. It was a farm which was bought by her husband's parents. He was a biologist, and he studied. He was what you call probably entomologist. That means he studied insects, and parents both, and he also was sick. He had tuberculosis, which was quite rampant in Poland at that time. And so he lived partly abroad in Switzerland and partly there, and he had to live not in town. And also that was for his work. He studied, for the study of insects, he had 2 beehives with bees. And they lived there on and off, just like this, a little bit in town and a little bit there. And when war broke out, he died of his disease, and Christina remained a widow with a little girl of 2.5 or 3 years, and she was about 40 at that time. And so she was there, and we knew the place. We visited her before. Our parents knew her and so on. So she said, she just said this, if the man came and said, Christina said, if the worst comes to the worst, come to me. So then we started with my sister thinking about going to her. And then still that chaplain was there, already with my sister and myself, and offering help. And the next day I said to him, listen, what I forgot to say, the camp, it was military camp, and around the camp there was a fence, and on the other side of the fence, there were always a lot of people watching us working there. A lot of Polish people, some of them probably sympathetic, and some of them probably pleased that we were there. I don't know. I can't say anything, but watching us. And it occurred to me that, or to my sister, I don't remember, that we can ask this chaplain to get message to somebody. Maybe he knows some of the people, maybe he can use some of these people to get message to a friend of ours, a schoolmate of ours, to give us some documents. And we did that, and we asked a girl who was in our class. Her name was Danusia Janowitz, and we asked her to bring or to send to us 2 identity cards. Now this girl had a foster mother, no, not foster mother. Stepmother, right. She had a stepmother. Her father was a very well-known surgeon, and he was, I think, divorced, I don't know, and then he married a very young woman. So her stepmother and she were almost the same age, very similar age. And you know that I can't remember, she didn't come. I think she sent us the 2 identity cards, her stepmother's, which she probably stole. I don't think she went to ask her. And her own. And okay, and then we said to this chaplain, listen, help us to get out of here, not back to the ghetto. We want to go out. And he said, fine. I said, okay, I will say to the guard that I want these 2 girls to stay in the evening to clean my room, my private room. And so he did. And we went first to his room, and then when it became dark, he just took us like this, and took us to a house near the fence of the camp, where there was an orgy going on there. I think it was a prostitute or several prostitutes living there, and there was drinking and music and soldiers and all these things. And I think he already spoke to that woman. He probably paid her or something, I don't know. Anyhow, she put a little storeroom at our disposal. And so we were in the storeroom waiting for the day to break, for the night. And in that storm was also a child. I remember that, and the child was very sick, and the child could hardly breathe. I remember the very heavy breathing and snoring of the child. I think she probably wanted to keep him away from what happened there in the house. And so the child and my sister and I sat in that store for the night, and early in the morning he arrived and took us again. We took off, of course, this, and took us like this, and brought us to the outskirts of the town. Now, Monica says, here we have, Monica says that he went along with us the whole way to Christina, but I'm sure she's wrong. I'm sure he only brought us to a certain point. Our idea was to go and see somebody who lived, we didn't know exactly where, but we thought we would find it, somebody who worked for my father, a kind of assistant or secretary, something like that, a young Polish man. And we thought that maybe he will take over and go with us a little bit to give some kind of respectability to our walking there alone, two girls. So I think we said goodbye to the chaplain there. What I do remember is that he said, listen, of course I shall not see you again. He said, I will not be back, certainly, which was probably true. And he gave me his picture, a snapshot, and I lost it. He gave me his snapshot, and I remember exactly how he looked I don't remember how he looked in life, but I remember how he looked on the stuff. He was a young man with a wind-blown scarf on skis. And he wished us good luck. We thanked him. That's this chaplain's story. He was probably killed somewhere in Stalingrad or whatever, He had no chance, but he knew it. He said something to the effect that he was so glad that he could help somebody before being killed. Something to the effect, Anyhow, so then we went. That young man got terribly scared when he came, and actually he didn't want to let us in. We didn't want to go in. We wanted just ask him to go with us for one, and he agreed in the end. I think my sister has a different story. My sister says that this German officer took us all the way, but I'm sure she's wrong. Because I remember with great plasticity the episode of saying goodbye to him there, and then going to Mr. Zlonkowski, whatever he is, Mr. Zlonkowski, and Mr. Zlonkowski being that scared and telling us that somebody whom he knew was killed by the German for talking to a Jew the other day. So naturally he was scared, but he agreed to go with us and he went with us for, just to make it appear to a boy and a girl and the two girls. He went with us part of the way, and then he also went back, and then we knew the way very well, but we came to a river, and we thought, how shall we cross this river? And then a gypsy woman with a boat was there. There were a lot of gypsies in that area, and she came up and she said, "You want to? Shall I tell you your future?" I said, "No, no, definitely not. And besides, we have no money to pay you." She said, "Okay, so I won't tell you your future, but I will. Do you want to go over the other side?" She said, "I will take you there without money." And then there was a strange thing, because now okay, I finished with that woman. So while we were on the boat, she sang a song, which sounded like a ballad. It was a song about two girls, and she said she spoke a dialect, which was spoken, a white Russian dialect, which was spoken in that area. And she said something like, two girls, nice, pretty, but their fate terrible. She was singing like that, under her nose, something like this.
You understood then?
Of course we understood. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to report to you. We understood that. No, we understood that she understood, obviously. But, people have that... when she brought us back, I remember that later we exchanged notes with my sister. Both of us were scared of her a little bit. We thought she might report us. Who knows? Anyhow, we thanked her and ran away as fast as possible. And now I come to a point which I don't remember. I think I will have to clear it up with my sister. Maybe she doesn't. I don't remember how we got in touch with our father, because we were passing a place not far away from where he worked. So we met him. But how we organized it? I think it was that Mr. Zilonkowski. I think it was that. Now it occurs to me. I thought I wouldn't. How did he know that he should meet us there? I think it was that Zilonkowski who arranged that. Anyhow, we met father in a clearing in a wood, and we talked and cried. What else could we do? And father was sure that he wouldn't see. Father was quite young at that time, that he wouldn't see us again. And we parted and went. And then we came, after a whole day of walking, we came to the place where Christina lived. And I remember her house.